Be here now.
Bringing together science and religion for a moment, you could consider what we've been talking about as conditions that forced an altered state of consciousness. That is, conditions that forced you to shift channels about reality. I think many of you, because I see so many old friends here, many of you know all the images that I've used about using television channels. And the fact is, most people don't have cable. They don't have an inner cable, and so they get a few channels of highly commercial, culturally conspiratorial reality. And then you get cable, and it changes everything, because you see that there are gazelles and there are elephants and there's all kinds of wonderful things. And that ability to shift into other planes of reality, away from the normal waking state of consciousness that William James talks about. It's interesting. William James was a philosopher psychologist. He was in fact, I was thrown out of William James Hall at Harvard when I was finally thrown out. And William James said that our normal waking consciousness is but one type, while all about it are these other types of consciousness that lie unknown. We may spend our entire lives without knowing of their existence, he said, but apply the requisite stimulus, and there they are in their completeness. It's not like there they are and you got to learn them. There they are fully. And you wonder, where have they been all your life? And these altered states of consciousness, there are many degrees of these altered states of consciousness, many kinds, many different channels on cable, on inner cable. And there are some that have incredible dramas in them. They're called the astral planes. I mean, that's one label for them. The funny thing about them is what we call planes are really just that there is a lot of other ways of being with what would be called reality. And our conceptual mind categorizes this into planes. But it's actually not a categorization system. It's not I mean, everything is in everything else all the time. And that's, I'm pushing very hard, but this is what you keep finding out. But for in an arbitrary sense, you can divide these in many different systems into chakras, into planes, into whatever you want to call them. And there are states where you meet archetypal figures and mythic identities and kind of bigger than life kind of phenomena. All the mythic structures of the different societies are that plane. And then there are ones where it gets subtler and subtler. You get into the Brahma Loka, where there's just pure mind, or Plato's pure idea plane of reality. And then you keep going out and you come into planes where there isn't, it contains the whole universe, but it's not manifest yet. It's unmanifest. It's just one field, and we call it the one. Now, these are planes of, let's play with planes of consciousness. And you and I exist on all of these planes simultaneously. But the way we got socialized and the way we bought into our incarnation led us to treat all of the ones on cable, for the most part, as irrelevant. Except unless you stayed open from all the way through from your childhood. We treat them as error or irrelevant, or we don't understand. And what we mean by spiritual are these other planes of consciousness. And they have other planes that engage our heart very deeply. Because when you get to the plane that has no boundaries to it, then it's a heart plane. You're experiencing love or presence or isness fully. So what we've been examining with this list are all the ways that individuals were moved out of normal waking consciousness into another plane of reality. Now, dream states are another plane of reality. And most people, as they wake up, forget their dreams. And you can train yourself to remember your dreams. And then you say, what relevance do the dreams have to my normal waking consciousness? Well, in some way, you could say my astral body is doing its own karmic working at the same time, but you also feel that there are links across these planes and that your dream state has to do with this state. But if you get too busy analyzing it, you just get caught in your mind on this state. So there's a way in which you have to intuitively begin to sense the relationship between different planes. Because if you use your analytic mind functions on the normal waking consciousness plane, and it keeps reducing everything to itself. So when I say there are mystic planes and you say, well, I'll think about it, forget it, see, because you're going to just reduce it to what you can know you know. And the predicament of these other planes of consciousness is you just necessarily can't know you know them, but you can be them. Because the thinking mind takes an object. It always thinks about things. Your sense experiences are experiencing things. There is always a distinction between the experiencer and that which is experienced. But that's only on some of the planes. On the lower planes, on the astral, that's still going on in the astral. But then there are planes beyond that where there is changes in the meaning of time. On the plane you and I are meeting on in San Jose, there is a sense of time and space. We met on Saturday in San Jose. And time is passing, and it's linear. And there's a here and a there. Move out a few planes in consciousness, and you come into an awareness where here and there are all here. Where now and then are all now. You move outside of time. Now, you and I as human beings live both in time and out of time. But the part of us that lives in time, we can think about and see and feel and smell and taste. It's aging, it's changing, it's in time. The part of us that is not in time is like the flashlight. You can't see it. You can't think about it. You can only be it. Because we are such philosophical materialists in the culture, we focus on what is knowable, seeable, thinkable about. And we give ourselves incredibly short shrift. Because all those parts of ourselves that are not seeable, knowable, thinkable about, we treat as non-existent. They don't exist as objects. They exist as subject. To imagine yourself that the part you're seeing, the personality and the body and all of that stuff, astral stuff, the Aries and the Libra and all that stuff, all your individual differences that are measurable and knowable and thinkable about are only like the tip of the iceberg. And that there is a vastness of your existence that merges with everything else in the universe and that yet is totally as true part of your being as the part you know, see, think about, smell, touch, taste, and feel. And in a way, the whole spiritual work is regaining the balance. I think this is important to hear this concept. It's regaining the balance. You take birth into an incarnation and you get trained into your separateness, into your that which is in time and space. You get trained on to looking at everything in channels 1, 2, or 3. And then comes the moment of awakening when you are forced out of those for one way or another, karmically, situationally, whatever, ecstatically, and you come into, quote, ecstasis, out of the static. You come out of the structure of your own mind and you come into the fullness of the moment. And you feel at home at that moment. You feel at peace. You feel at oneness. You feel, where have I been? This has always been. This is who I am. What am I doing with all that stuff? Why am I feeling so cut off all the time when I'm not cut off? And the gate opens and you see it, and then for many people it closes again. And that's the entry. That's the awakening moment. You can imagine that before that awakening moment is acknowledged in human beings, people who do not acknowledge that awakening hear all that discussion about awakening as crazy talk. So that when you're in that experience, people are saying, come down to reality. You know, what are you talking about? The world's hard and it's tough. And that's also true. But what has happened is we lost our balance. We got so caught in our separateness. We got so caught in channels 1, 2, and 3 where there's time and space that it blinded us to the other parts of our being where we are one with all of it, where we are unmanifest, where we are out of time and space, where we are the flashlight. We lost the subtlety of our existence into the grossness of the form. And all of the religions and spiritual practices are designed to take you from that stuckness back into the domain of the oneness, the formless, the God, living spirit, living truth, to love, to presence, because all these words are just the fingers pointing at the same thing. Allah, Yahweh. As we'll talk about later in the weekend, the end product, the end game is not to push away channels 1, 2, and 3 in order to exist in the la-la land of no form and no time, no space and no time. But it is to reestablish yourself within it so that then you can come back and dance in the world of form, so that you end up in form and not in form at the same time. So now I just want to have you understand the sequence we're playing with this weekend. The sequence goes from taking birth, you are one with everything, then you get socialized into your separateness, 1, 2, and 3, time, space, everything, and that's reality, and that's the reality most of you grew up around, and the society treats as reality. And then at some moment, the awakening occurs, and you realize that whole reality was only relative reality. It was not absolute reality, and that there's other reality as well. And then in your zeal to get reestablished in that other reality which you taste, which feels peaceful, at home, familiar, whatever you want to call that, bliss, rapture, those are clues of it. It's beyond bliss and rapture, but they're things that take you in. You become very zealous in looking for spiritual practices and paths. If your way is the heart, you find ways to fall in love. And you love somebody, you love the guru, you love the mother, you love somebody so deeply that the love takes you into this other plane of awareness, where you are just love, where there's no lover and lovee, there's just love. If your path is the path of the mind, you do the kind of meditation we were just doing, where you keep expanding and come back into awareness that includes everything, that spacious awareness. That was a technique of Dhyan yoga. There are all these different techniques for different folks, all designed to pull you back into this formless, unitive, blissful, present awareness. But just remember, while the stage, that stage often has a renunciate quality in it, like you're pushing away the earth plane, pushing away channel 1, 2, and 3 to get out there. The end game is not to be out there and to deny your incarnation. The end game is what Christ talks about, of being in the world and not of the world. To bring it together so that it's both, you come out and you are, see, at first, is this too weird? Are you with me? Anybody here? Okay. I don't know, because it gets so beautiful to me, I forget. See, at first, it's like you're standing on the earth and you got a telescope and you went out there for a moment and then you came back and then you're looking at the stars and you say, I'm going to get back out there and I'm going to push. And you're very busy with your propulsion system to get you out there. And you breathe and you meditate and you have out satsang and you do all the things to get the juice to get the hell out of there and get out there back into the stars and the planets and the universe and the joy and the timelessness and all of it. After a while, the game shifts. See? For a long time, you get out there, which is in the street vernacular called getting high, and then you come down. It's called coming back. Grounding. I'm back. I'm back, and I'm in a refractory period, so I got to wait before I can get out again. And you look for methods constantly to take you out, constantly to take you out. And if it doesn't get you high, you don't want to know about it. I mean, that's a stage in the whole process. Because once you've tasted this thing, it starts to become the most important thing in your life at some stage. And there are stages in that, too. I mean, there's the awakening, and then, oh, isn't that wonderful? Well, maybe someday I'll have it. And then you come to the stage of, gee, I think I want it sooner than that. And then you sort of want it, but you don't really want to give up what you got to get it. That's a good stage. That's the abbot at the monastery saying, I would like to be like the Desert Fathers, but I don't want what I want just yet. And then the hunger gets greater and greater, and then you're really hungry for it. And then everything you're dealing with seems like slish. It turns into kind of nothing. And all you want is that, and you're starting to get weird behind it, and fanatic and all that, mashugana stuff. And then now comes the next stage, where you start to be established in it, in the high, more and more of the time. And then you become to the awareness that you want to be free. You just don't want to be high, you want to be free. And to be free, you can't be pushing away anything. And then you look at all the things you're pushing away, which is the physical, psychological, astral planes, all your individual differences, and you realize you have to turn around and be in the world and not of it. You have to learn how to honor your incarnation fully in order to be free.
Just be here now.